Welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. I'm your host, as always, Orlando Haynes. Happy New Year to everyone. Hopefully, you're starting this new year in a positive note, ready to attack your goals, your dreams, your passions. Super excited. Got a phenomenal topic and a repeat guest from a good friend. So super excited to have her on. I want to dive right into it because we are in that digital space, and this topic I think, is really relevant right now. So happy to bring my friend right back to the channel, Miss Lorraine K. Lee. How are you?
I'm great. It's so amazing to be back a second time. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for saying yes. So super excited. Let me first ask you, how was your new year?
New Year was great. Went back to LA where I'm from, spent 2 weeks there. Weather was mostly nice, a little bit of a downpour, which is, not always, you don't expect in LA, but we had some of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice, relaxing. Spent it with my family, my new husband, as we just were chatting about before. So really nice to have
Yes.
everyone together.
Well, congratulations to you on the wedding.
Thank you.
Also, we was also chatting about completing your first year of entrepreneurship and the exciting things that you're doing. So, congratulations to you
Thank you.
there.
Thanks,
So,
Orlando.
so what I do miss is your updates. So, hopefully, you'll bring those back and start to give a recap of what you've done, whether it might be quarterly or something like that. But those are very inspirational and insightful. So, I'm hoping and urging that you bring those back to
Okay,
us.
it's helpful feedback to hear things like that, so I will consider it for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, let's get started. So, the digital space, being able to communicate on video, having the expertise in that. Uh, where does that talk to me about the first thing first? Well, first introduce yourself because people, it's been a year since you've been on the podcast.
Mhm.
Let's reintroduce who you are for those folks who don't know.
Sure. Well, hello everyone who's tuning in. I'm Lorraine. I'm the founder of Rise Learning Solutions, where I speak, I consult, and I teach ambitious professionals how to supercharge their professional presence. And when I say presence, I mean it in both senses of the word. So I think a lot of people, when they hear presence, they think charisma and confidence and how I come across to others, which is certainly a big piece of it. But also, I tackle the where piece. So, LinkedIn presence, being on video, being in the right meetings, being in the right Slack channels. So, you kind of need both of those pieces of the equation to really stand out as a professional and really advance your career. So, that's my topic of expertise and what I'm really passionate about. And of course, Orlando, video presence is a huge piece of that, especially in our
Mhm.
digital world, as you mentioned.
Love it, love it. So, for those that don't know, I'll say it now before I forget. Definitely follow Lorraine. She's amassed over 300,000 followers on LinkedIn. So you can only do that if your content is phenomenal. So I'm a huge fan of you, as you know. So definitely, folks, as you're watching, go ahead and just click the follow button and consume her content. So first off, let's talk about video communication. Right, we're in that space where that's still going on,
Yeah.
even coming out of COVID, if we're officially out,
Mhm,
whatever that that pocket is. But
mhm,
talk to us about what you've been seeing and things that you've been communicating and speaking
mhm.
to folks about the importance of improving your video communication.
Sure. So I'm seeing two different camps. So there's one camp of people who feel like, I already know about video. It's been a few years. I've kind of, made some changes, and people should know about video now. And I don't, need to learn anything more. But there's still a lot of people, and I'm sure Orlando, you've seen this too, when you're on calls, and a lot of people, their extent of being on video is, okay, I know how to join a Zoom call, I know how to mute, unmute, I know how to do reactions. But beyond that, they haven't really established their video presence. They're not putting their best digital foot forward, so to speak. They do not have the right video setup. It's not just about how you appear virtually. They are not conveying energy on calls, for example. They're just not putting their best foot forward. And really, most of us will have some virtual piece to our jobs, whether it's the full part of it, part time, whether we're in a hybrid office. So being able to really understand how to communicate virtually and really appear your best self virtually is going to be so critical to being able to advance your career and ultimately being seen how you want to be seen.
Love it, love it. So, what are some initial things? So, one of the things actually, let me circle back. You said there was I know how to do
Mhm.
like the emojis and the thumbs up
Yeah.
ones, things like that. I'm starting to see that more. So, you're in the office. Let's speak to the folks that are in corporate America,
Mhm.
and they're on the meeting.
Mhm.
Half the meeting, half of the folks, and it doesn't have to be a large group,
Mhm.
are not on camera,
Mhm.
and then there are folks that are on camera.
Mhm.
Share the differences and the importance of presence for each parties. What's being missed?
Mhm.
What's being said
Yeah.
potentially in those instances?
Yeah, well, I really love that question. That's something I've been talking about more lately. When we have our cameras off, and of course there are reasons,
Mhm.
we're all human, there are things going on. Sometimes we just don't feel like being on camera, whatever. But, for the most part, when you are not on camera, and if you are consistently not on camera, it's going to be a different experience. Like, let's say, Orlando, you're talking to me and you're talking to Bob, like our other coworker, and I always have my video on, and Bob always has his video off. You're gonna feel like you know me a little bit more, a little bit better, right? And that we connect better because you can see my facial expressions, you can see my hand gestures, you can see me smiling, and you can see my energy. Whereas
Mhm.
Bob, you're gonna associate with, on Zoom, it'll just have his name or like a gray outline, and that's what you're gonna associate Bob with. And so, even just the simple act of turning on your camera is a really important first step to making sure that you are seen. Now, one thing I like to say for people who maybe don't feel comfortable or who are, keeping their camera off for whatever reason, a really simple trick I like to always recommend people do is upload a profile picture. Because at least when you upload a profile picture, people can still see a face, not just a name or a gray square. And so that will help a little bit. But ideally, you want to have your video on again to just better connect with the other person and to make them kind of get to know you as a person.
So, is there, and this may not be as important, but I have you, the guru, on. So, let me ask every question possible. With uploading the picture, should it be just you? Could it
Hmm.
be a wedding photo, a recent trip photo with you and your sibling or
Yeah.
family member or spouse?
I like to just keep your headshot, so I just use what I have on LinkedIn. Um, it can be kind of fun, I think, just depending on your work environment to have maybe a more
Mhm.
personal photo, but you want to be able to see your face clearly because you want them to connect and feel like even if your video isn't on when they're talking to you, they see your smiling face, even if it's a photo looking back at them. So, um, yeah, I think like a family picture might be a little confusing. It's like which one are you? I mean, it's nice, you show that you have a family.
Yeah,
But I think, yeah, for the sake of video calls, just having a nice close-up picture of your face usually works best.
awesome. And then you mentioned too the connection, the
Mhm,
lack of connection when
mhm,
the camera's off.
mhm,
Right, there's definitely a second layer. Have you heard anything from throughout your career that managers' perception changes of you? Does that
mhm.
hurt you for additional opportunities just because they just feel like you're not engaged? Like, is there any perception that's going around when it comes to that since we've been in this space so long?
Yeah, no data comes to mind right now, but I do think subconsciously, if you are not seeing people on camera, you're
Mhm.
going to not think that they are as engaged. And a lot of people are talking about video fatigue because we have our cameras on all the time. So there's a, case to turn them off sometimes. But really that kind of veers into another topic, which is a lot of our meetings are bad. And that's why people don't want to turn on their
Mm.
cameras because they're tired. And it's like, why do I even have to be here? I'm going to be multitasking. So I'm going to turn off my camera. So, better meetings, if you have better meetings, people are going to be more tuned in. They will have their cameras on and be able to focus because they know that that's an important meeting where you're going to actually get things done. So those two things I think are kind of connected.
What are some tips that you would share right off the back? Say, and I'll paint a picture for you. Company hired you. They're saying, "Hey, how do we improve? How do we engage? We're a remote, office.
Mhm.
How do we engage, get more productivity?" What would you share with the employers first, the hiring management team, the executive team first, as some best
Mhm.
practices?
You mean in terms of, meetings
Well, not meetings, but just
or video
camera
calling?
presence. Yeah,
Mm.
setting that tone for the department, for the
Mhm.
the company to say, "Hey, here's why we prefer everyone to be on camera."
Yeah. Well, I think the first things first, having leadership have their cameras on is very important because you want to obviously model, what you're seeing.
Mhm.
So I think indicating that having cameras on, you want to give a reason for it, not just we want your cameras on because that way we feel like you're paying attention, but we want your cameras on because then we can get to know each other a little bit better. I can make eye contact with you and feel like we're more connected. I can see your facial expressions and I can see your hand gestures and I can see the energy you're bringing to a call. So all these reasons are good reasons why people should want to be on camera. Also, I think if you're trying to get buy-in for something, for example, like talking to a person versus a name, or again, that profile picture is going to go farther if you can actually feel like you're talking to a person and developing that relationship. I think one thing that a lot of companies are not doing, which I encourage them to do, is like they really need to bring someone in to train the employees. It's not just enough to say, okay, everyone turn on your cameras. Like this is really important for XYZ reasons. But employees are not getting the training and the support they need to really build that video and virtual presence to be able to understand how to communicate effectively in a virtual space. So to be able to bring someone in to help really support the employees, and that's something that employees have shown time and time again that they want more of, that makes them happy to stay at a company, is to get that kind of training and support. I think that's a really good first step.
Love that. So when we first got into, I guess, COVID, and then Zoom took off, and everyone was
Mhm,
talking about camera presence and interview,
mhm,
but then it died off. And
mhm,
still think it's relevant, and I'm glad
mhm.
that you're pushing
Yeah.
this conversation forward. Talk to us also about what you would think be obvious is background,
Mm,
especially you're in a meeting. Um, you
yeah,
don't want to expose too much personal stuff in the background. I think it's reiterate what a background typically should look like
sure.
for that professional environment.
Yeah. I'll actually take it one step forward. So, background, yes, very important. But when I talk about video presence, I often talk about curating your whole environment. So, I'll
Mm,
explain what that means. So, definitely, background is one piece of that. You want something that's not too cluttered, something that's clean. I mean, Orlando, your background is great. You have some personal branding things on there, which is awesome as well. But ideally, pretty clean wall. You're not going to want a very deep background, like with going far back because it feels just like a big space behind you. I think you want something a little bit closer, a little bit more intimate. Plants, I have lots of plants. I think plants exude warmth and a sense of calmness. So I like to have those there. Some personal touches are great. Like Orlando, I see you have your book back there. I have this caricature of me and my husband from our wedding, and many people have been calling it out. So it's a nice conversation starter, for example. So don't be afraid to add elements of your personal life or photos or pieces of art, things like that, that can help instigate nice conversation. And then the environment piece of that. So background, definitely key. But you can see here up front here in my virtual space here, I have some visuals on my screen. And really, this is a very small piece of space. So we want to be taking advantage of the whole thing. So yes, background is important, but also there's a lot of different technology out there that can help you with the foreground of your video. So it's
mm.
really about kind of everything that's going around in this small screen that we have, and just making sure, again, you're putting your best foot forward and taking advantage of this really small space that we have.
Right, because that background can be an immediate distraction for folks.
Hmm.
So I think that's the first thing after seeing the camera come on. We
Hmm.
do a scan of what we can see in the room, see how
Yeah.
that person lived, what's interesting
Yeah.
or what's personal, what can we find out about that person even more so. So like you mentioned, the
Hmm.
caricature, if I pronounced that correctly,
Yeah. Yeah.
of you here, the cartoon drawing
The drawing.
of you and your husband.
Hmm.
They can be like, oh, what's that photo of? Right, immediately
Hmm.
be drawn. That's like a immediate indicator when they ask you about it that they're looking
Yep.
into what's behind you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
So
Makes
for me,
sense.
I kind of blur out the background on Zoom
Mm,
just because sometimes I don't want to know. Oh, you got a podcast? I mean, this is work. I don't want that to come up,
yeah.
but it tends to come up sometimes. But I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, let me blur this out real quick. So that's interesting. We have a couple of questions that are coming in from the folks. And Khadijah, thank you for joining. Erica, thank you for joining. She had two questions. And Eva, thank you for joining. Or Eva, she said, explain the why. Explain the why can be great to increasing engagement on camera. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. but explaining the why, it can be great to increasing engagement on
Mhm,
camera.
mhm. Yeah, well, I think again, like don't have as many touch points with our coworkers or colleagues if we're not in the office all the time, right? And many companies are going hybrid or virtual only, virtual
Mhm.
first. So we want to take advantage of all these opportunities we have to meet with our peers. Like we're not doing the small talk in the halls anymore. I mean,
Right.
Orlando, like if we were working at the same company, like I might only see you on video once a week, or like that. This might be the only way I ever see you, right? So having our video on and being able to connect in that way virtually is really important and is going to be a really big way that we can again connect, develop relationships, and then build engagement with one another and build engagement in larger team meetings as well.
And I also think, and let me know what your thoughts. Just the attention span, just generic, simple attention span of humans is
Mhm.
very, very short.
Yeah,
And I think anytime that I've been in previous meetings of previous companies and it was on a video and I wasn't on camera, I was less engaged, and I
yeah.
could have missed. I think I might have missed something crucial. I was just like, "Yep, on my phone, huh?" They're like, "Orlando, what do you think,
Or
huh?"
you'd
Oh, I'm
pick up
sorry.
your
What was that?
phone. Yeah.
Can you repeat that question? My apologies. I was
Yeah, yeah.
zoned out.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point for sure. Yeah, it makes you you have to be on camera, you have to be a little bit more on and then focused.
Exactly. Erica has another question. What are your feelings on virtual backgrounds?
I was wondering if someone was going to ask this question. It's a question that comes up a lot. So I would say virtual backgrounds, try to avoid if you can. The thing with virtual backgrounds is they only work well if you have like a professional green screen behind you. And that way the virtual background will fit very tightly around your body. But if you don't have a green screen, and I'm sure all of you in the audience have noticed this before, you've been on calls and someone's like moving their hand or they're moving their head, and then something like pops out here, or you can like kind of see something appear all of a sudden in the background. And we're already working really hard on video, right? It's a little bit unnatural, not like in person. So we're focusing on like trying to, read your facial cues, Orlando, and like everything you're saying and read your energy. And so I'm already working overtime. And then with your virtual background and things start popping in and out, it detracts from, the experience. It reminds me, okay, this is not quite like in person.
Hmm.
There's like this extra layer of distraction, and yeah, and your mind is having to kind of reconcile. Okay, it's like we're talking in person, but then all these things are like popping up, and it's just very unnatural. So, as much as you can, like Orlando and I were saying, like try to curate a background. And again, it does not need to be your entire house. Just kind of the 6 feet of space behind you. Curate a small space if you can. If it's very busy behind you, like I like to recommend maybe you get a room divider, or there's other creative things you can do. I had this coworker who worked in his kitchen, and I think the pantry was behind him, but then he hung up a curtain, so that kind of blocked off the space and made it look more professional. So again, lots of tricks. It does not need to be like a professionally designed space, but it does need to be curated ideally, and just kind of clean, professional, and nothing distracting going on.
Yeah, and I think that's doable, really at no cost, right? It's simple,
Mhm.
just um, a, a space like you said that's curated for in simplicity too. I don't
Mhm.
think you have to go out
Mhm.
and buy all these different things to make it look depth and
Mhm.
spectacular. That's not needed, right? So
Yeah.
you watch YouTube, you see all these other podcasts, and some of them are just it looks over cluttered, and some are just super simple with some uplighting or something just for effects, but it's
Mhm.
not that hard. I think we have some more questions there. So Khadija said, "Is there a top tier tip um, to stand out as a candidate during the virtual interview?" Great questions.
Mm. There's a few. I don't know if I can name like the number one, but so I'll name a few. So the first is eye contact. Orlando and I were checking our eye contact before the call.
Mhm.
So as you can see us talking now, as you're watching, it looks like we're looking right at you, right? A lot of people will have their laptop. This will be their laptop, this will be their monitor, and they put all their content on their monitor, and so they're talking like this, and imagine if I was talking like this the whole time, it feels like I'm a little bit distracted, I mean, even if I'm looking at you, it feels like I'm distracted, and it's just not as engaging as if I'm looking straight at you. And this eye contact is one of the best ways that we connect virtually. It releases something called oxytocin. It's a social bonding hormone. When we're in person and we shake hands, that skin to skin contact releases oxytocin. We don't have that virtually. So eye contact is going to be one of the best ways to make that connection and feel like we're bonded. Another thing, framing. So, we're talking about our backgrounds here. A lot of people have their cameras too high or too low. You really want to have it, front and center. You want to be able to show a little bit of your torso, and that allows you to use your hand gestures, to use your body a little bit more. It helps emphasize your points. Again, when you can show your hands on camera, you come across warmer, more energetic, more personable. So lots and lots of benefits to showing your hands on camera. So eye contact and framing are really important. And then, related to that, do use your hands, do use your body on camera. I know a lot of us are used to resting our hands on our keyboards or on our mouse, and we just keep our hands down here, or we move our hands down here. I'm moving them right now, but you can't see. But lift your hands up, make sure that they get on the screen so that you can, again, help emphasize those key points and also just appear more trustworthy, more personable, all those really positive attributes.
Love it. Love it. I have nothing to add to that. That's awesome. When it comes to, and it's almost like we're talking about video production, but again, it's not that hard. The lighting. Talk about
Yes,
the
yeah.
lighting. Yeah.
The lighting is key as well. Let me actually just show you an example. So let's say I'm getting on an interview and my lighting is like this versus this. Like here, you can see my face a lot more clearly. This is dark. You can't see me as well. And if you're using your laptop cameras, like those are very bad cameras. It's going to make you look even worse than how I look right now. But you want lighting to show your face so people can see you. And also lighting is a really great way to add confidence to yourself when you're on calls. I know when I'm lit well, I feel a lot more confident, and I just know I look more professional. So it's just a really nice addition that you can make. Again, as Orlando said, like it does not need to be super elaborate. Maybe you get some ring lights, some softbox lights. I have an LED light in front of me. The one thing I would say with lighting is you want to get lights that have different color temperatures because depending on the time of day, you might need the white light versus the warm light versus the cold light. So making sure to have those options is important.
Good. I had a question, but Yvonne is actually in line with what I was thinking. She's asking any tips on outfit colors when one is in a virtual interview.
Yeah. So I say go with jewel tones, colors that make you pop against the background, make you, and also colors that are not too close to your skin color. You don't want to blend in with, everything that's going on behind you. The one thing I would say to avoid, the one thing, you look sleepy.
That's what I'm doing now. I can just
yeah. You're one with your environment.
my wall. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I would say to avoid is anything with stripes, and you can test this out yourself on video. If you wear something with stripes, I don't know why it does this, but it looks like your shirt is moving. So if you want to wear something patterned, just test it out on a call before actually doing the real thing, because you want to make sure it's not distracting and doesn't look like your patterns are moving all over. But jewel tones are ideally the best.
I didn't know that about the stripes. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. So
Super
it's like you
strange.
can almost, well, maybe they should. You kind of hypnotize the manager and it's
focus
offering
on
you the
those.
job right on the spot. So yeah. Oh man, that's funny. I did not know that. But so I was going to ask that as well, as far
Yeah.
as the colors you wear contrasting with your background, right? Because I'm completely blended in, and I was like, oh my god, I'm wearing black and my background's black, so I'm changing that. But when I look at yours, and I'm bad with color, so it's more of a brown or taupe color.
Yeah, like a brownish gold. Yeah. And all my
Yeah,
colors are like a blue, like a deep blue or like a purple, or it's just like solid, nice kind of deep colors.
yep. And then what pops is the plant pot color, the darker
That's,
blue, the white, the green.
yeah,
So all those things pop and it draws attention. Even though I don't know,
exactly.
what color is that in that picture? Is that orange at the bottom of it, or so all those things just right over your shoulder?
Oh, this
Yeah.
is, these are some books. Yeah, just like
Okay.
blue, or it's like a mix of color. Yeah, so like
Yeah.
to your point, like I had the white wall, which is like the most basic, and then you just start adding pops of color. It adds a nice touch.
Yeah, that as I look at that, that just and I'm looking down to look at it,
Yeah.
is it's more, it feels more welcoming and more in a
Yeah.
home setting for sure. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh
Thanks.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah, and it kind of for me, it just thinks if I'm the manager, oh wow, she got a great decorative idea, eye
Mhm.
for a decorator, things like that. So it's pretty cool. So um, take into that. Don't want to overwhelm everyone, but yes, those are things to consider. But and once you set it up once, that's it, right? It's set it and forget it,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless you want to change it, something like that. But um, pressing for, and thanks again, folks, for all the questions. Keep them coming. Uh, when we're talking about communication on it,
Mhm.
let's talk about the cadence and speech on video.
Mm.
Talk to us about best practices around that.
Yeah, so there's a few things to keep in mind when you're speaking on video. The first thing I would say uh, is bringing the energy. So if you all are in video calls all day, you probably notice that a lot of people, for whatever reason, maybe because we're not in person, it's much easier on video to be kind of more laid back, more monotone, just kind of talking. I'm giving my presentation, da 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 da. If you want to stand out, and especially it sounds like Orlando, a lot of your audience are interested in video communications as it pertains to virtual interviewing, which is great. You want to bring the energy to calls, and so that means smiling. That means
Mhm.
raising your voice, speaking a little bit more loudly, and instead of like a more passive, relaxed way, just speaking up a little bit more. One of the benefits of that too is when you speak a little bit more loudly, it's going to help you eliminate those nasty filler words that speak in because we're just naturally in a more active speaking state versus more relaxed. That's when filler words speak in. So, kind of bringing that energy, speaking it more loudly is a really great step. Making sure that you understand the power of the pause, right? When we're on video, often we think, oh my gosh, there's an awkward silence. But there's also that kind of awkwardness of you speak, I don't want to speak over you. But just being okay with pausing, that allows, other people to chime in and also shows that you're confident that you don't need to fill in the time, nonstop, just speaking, speaking, speaking. Pace is also something to think about. So if you're really excited about something, you might speak a little bit more quickly. If you're talking about something more serious, you'll probably talk a little bit more slowly. And then, of course, as well, pitch as well. So you might speak more highly, you might lower your voice, again, if it's something serious. So there's all these different things that come into play. And again, you can use these skills as well when you're in person, but particularly over video, you need to be extra conscious because they're a little bit less natural. Again, because being on video is a little bit less natural than in person. So lots of different things to keep in mind and ways that you can kind of play around with your voice and your energy to make the best impression.
So, follow up question on the cadence and speed.
Mhm.
Is that a good thing in an interview? Yes, we want to show the excitement,
Yeah.
whatever the topic is, but when we speed up, do we have a higher chance of maybe losing, that rhythm and
Mhm.
communication because we're talking so fast, and now that interviewer is like, okay, wow. Let me catch up because they just
Yeah.
went from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
love
I
the
think
passion, but
yeah. Yeah, I think when I say, when you're talking more quickly, it's not like "duh, duh, 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 duh," just a little bit faster. Maybe you speed up a little bit. It's something that you're
Mhm.
excited about. But generally, yes, talking a little bit slower, a little bit more consistently, incorporating the pauses that will show confidence and competence when you speak.
Because I'm conscious of it when I give presentations virtually.
Mhm.
Maybe not on the podcast so much, and
Mhm.
again, I feed off the energy of the guest, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
everything you're saying, I'm doing because it's naturally, and your energy is great, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is it's a tennis match. It's just going back and
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
But definitely, I'm super conscious of it from giving presentations.
Mhm.
And so my inflection goes up, it goes down, it pauses.
Mhm.
I get closer to the mic so they hear
Mhm.
me louder and emphasizing certain words,
Yeah.
to bring like real poignant note to what I'm trying to say. And then I'll repeat it to make a stronger
Mhm.
emphasis. Now
Mhm.
that's presentation mode, right?
Mhm.
From an interview standpoint, I tend to sometimes I catch myself slouching, but
Mm.
then I'm like, oh my god, I got to work to
Mhm.
get out of that and
Yeah.
really fix my posture, and then again to be um, more a little more animated. Sometimes I'll keep my hands down, And again, depending on who I'm speaking with, I
Mhm.
somewhat mirror that, but I'm like, okay,
Mm.
let me break out of that. And I always catch myself to say, okay, let me be who I am. Let me bring the energy if the energy is not there on their side.
Mhm. Yeah, that's I really like that you said that, because sometimes it's you will get on calls and the other person does not have any energy,
Hmm.
and it's hard for you to kind of, play off of that, but, if you can even if someone does not have energy, you should still be bringing the energy. I'm sure the other person's gonna appreciate it, and it's just best practice, right? Like, that might just be them, but I'm sure they're appreciating it, but yeah, you bringing the energy, first, sometimes some people just don't know how to do it. So it can help a lot. Yeah, kind of raise just everyone's kind of positivity and energy levels on a call.
Love it. So we talked about a lot of the visual. We talked about the communication piece. A little more technical with the audio.
Mm.
Should
Mhm.
we use, and again, it depends, but should we use an external microphone
Mhm.
or rely on the laptop microphone?
So similar to the video, the laptop video, you want an external camera and you want an external microphone. The reason being because the cameras and the microphones in our laptops just aren't great quality. So the external microphone just makes everything clearer. And really the thing with audio is if you are on a video call and someone's video was bad, but the audio was good, you can still focus. If someone's video is good, but their audio is bad, you're just gonna want to hang up and there's no point of being on the call. So really the audio is kind of that
Mm.
first stop I recommend. Yeah, to make sure you have the right hardware for that, and to just make sure you sound clear and people can hear your voice.
Now, for me, I'm always using this, right? So
Mhm.
it's kind of big enough to be in the camera, and I'm
Yeah.
sometimes like, I don't want to show it, or I'll do this. I'll set it off to the side,
Uh-huh.
but hopefully it's loud enough so you can still hear me
Mhm.
clearly.
Yeah.
But you can obviously hear the difference, right? In me
Mhm.
speaking directly into it or not. What do you say? Is it risky to be like, hey, do you mind if I have this, microphone here so you can hear me clearly? Any concerns with that, or would that seem odd?
I don't think there's any concerns. I think when people see a microphone like you have, Orlando, that tends to be kind of like a podcast look, like
Hmm.
having it in the shot. But I wouldn't I mean, if I was a manager and I saw someone's microphone, I'd be like, "Oh, great, they have an external microphone." I wouldn't really think anything of it, and, so yeah, I say go for it.
So for we spoke for about you spoke to about the employee. Um, does it change for the manager and for those any managers, hiring managers? Right. It sounds like we're prepping job seekers and
Mhm,
professionals, but let's
mhm,
flip it for the managers. Let's make sure they're just as presentable.
mhm.
Is there any change in the best practices you provided?
I don't think so. What I would say from a manager perspective is that when you are going to interview someone, it might be a nice practice to send them kind of a list of best practices of things to prepare ahead of the call so that the person, let's say they just don't know much about video, like you don't want
Hmm.
them to be horribly disadvantaged with their virtual presence just because they're not aware. So that could be something, but yeah, for everyone, everyone should be following all these best practices that we've shared today.
I love that. So for any hiring managers, anybody in the space now, have your HR team partner with maybe TA and put out a list of
Mhm,
saying, "Hey, this is what we send out per video interview to prep the interview and
mhm,
the interviewee and
mhm,
interviewer at
mhm.
the same time. Make sure this is in place because, like you said, there's nothing worse when you're solid and prepared, but the manager, him or her, the connection, everything's kind of wonky. You're like, oh, this is not going to go well, right? There's going to be
Yeah.
intermittent, it's going to break up,
Mhm,
and it's just a bad experience, especially for that candidate overall.
mhm, mhm,
What are some things that we're missing? Any common themes that you've heard through
mhm.
your talks with companies and clients and things like that that we haven't covered just yet?
Yeah, so I created this framework called the T method, and
Mm.
it's a simple framework to follow anytime you get on a video call. So T stands for tech, energy, and aesthetics. So I think we've covered a lot of the tech. We definitely covered the aesthetics, and we've talked a little bit about the energy piece. But one other thing I would want to touch on is that when you get on calls, a lot of us are still stuck in autopilot mode.
Mhm.
And this is going to be a really great piece of advice for any of you interviewing out there. When we get on calls, really the conversations and just in everyday life, I mean, we can predict how conversations will go. Like, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Good. Thanks. Or like, how was your new year? Like everyone has like the same conversations, right? So if you can be that person when you join a call to break out of the autopilot, whether you are the interviewee or the interviewer, that's just a really nice way to, again, find ways to connect with one another and also just stand out. So if you see something in their background, like that's a great way to call something out. Instead of asking or responding, let's say they ask, how are you? Instead of just saying, oh, I'm good, how are you? You might have a different response like, oh, I'm so great. Like I just went on a walk. It's so nice out here. Or I just listened to my favorite podcast. Like adding a little bit something that's different, whether you are asking the question or answering the question, goes a long way in helping you stand out, especially in a virtual space where, again, we're a little bit more relaxed. We're just kind of on autopilot, just doing the same things. So if you can break out of that mold, that's really a nice thing to help you stand out.
Love that. That's really good advice. So, because I see that most interviewees kind of get a deer in headlights look,
Mhm.
waiting for the interview
Yeah.
to kick off and
Oh my
start
gosh.
and
Yeah.
get, pretty much get probed with a bunch of questions. And I think
Yeah.
by you doing that, what you just explained will break the ice and bring more personality to the interview. And
Yeah.
then give them an insight like, oh, so you hike. Oh, you like this. Oh, you do
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's just like
That's
a
really good.
fast way to connect, and that's like a very good point. Yeah, I imagine getting on an interview is very nerve-wracking, and you're just
Mhm.
waiting. You're like, okay, I'm ready. I prepared for all the questions you're going to ask. But yeah, don't discount kind of that initial introduction, that first impression that gets formed within even just a few milliseconds or the first few seconds of your call.
So Khadijah has a question. How do you maintain composure in interviews? Ooh, that's a good one.
So I would say breathing is very important. So I, same with you, Orlando, like give a lot of keynotes and presentations, and those can be very nerve wracking. And when that happens, I don't breathe deeply enough. And you start talking up here in your chest, and you run out of air, and it becomes very awkward and uncomfortable. Now I'm much better at it. But what you want to do is just make sure you're breathing from your diaphragm down below. And so you can kind of put your hands on your waist down here, kind of like where your obliques are. When you breathe in, you want that area to expand. And so just make sure that you are kind of taking full breaths as you speak. I think that will help a lot, both slow your heart rate and then also kind of keep you a little bit more grounded, less nervous in the moment. There are also things, I don't know, like composure can mean a lot of different things, but let's say you get really hot and nervous. You
Mhm.
can physically hold something cold to kind of bring your body temperature down. If you get cold, you hold something hot to raise your temperature up. So if this person wants to elaborate a little bit more, if they have a specific scenario, I can try to touch on that. But generally, I feel like breathing is the big one.
For me, and again, that's a great question, Khadijah, is I figured out what's a great confidence posture for me if
Mm,
I'm sitting in a chair, especially in person. And for me, it's just I cross my leg and I feel more
mm,
zoned in. Super.
yeah.
I wouldn't say I don't. Yeah, I just feel extremely confident, and I'm mindful again of what Lorraine touched on earlier, the cadence and how I speak in the interview, depending on the answer. So I'm watching
Mhm,
that I don't talk too fast, and I want to
mhm,
clearly emphasize something like I'm slowing down now. I'll stress it. Facial expressions too is huge for
mhm,
me. Um, like if I'm getting a point, I'm trying to get them to say yes. Like you get someone to agree with you yes 3 times,
mhm,
you can sell them on what you're talking
okay,
about. So I'm like, this is what I do, and and so
mhm,
I get them pacing and almost mimicking my motions. And so, but the biggest thing for me when I learned throughout interviewing was a confident posture. So I figured that out for me and what that was. And the moment I hit that spot, I was like ready to go. If I'm sitting normal, hands on the lap, I feel like I'm being interrogated. Right? It's not good for me. So
yeah,
I'll get comfortable,
yeah,
cross my leg, and sit up, and then I'm like, I'm equal, right? We're just having a
yeah,
conversation here. Let's engage.
yeah.
So that's worked for me. see if any of those tips
That's a
that
good
we
one.
shared, and give us feedback. So if your next interview, figure out what that is, and share some feedback with both Lorraine and I. Give us a
Mhm.
quick message and let us know if any of that worked. If any of the tips that Lorraine shared, give her the feedback. Give us the
Yeah,
feedback
send
for
it to me.
sure. Absolutely. So, well, time is flying by. So, when it comes to, again, I want to reiterate communication on video.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think what pockets that we might have missed. You said
Mm.
team, uh, tech, aesthetics, energy,
Yep. Mhm.
and what else? Was it 3 or 4?
3, tech, energy, aesthetics.
Oh, TEE. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. But folks, because I'm glad you're asking questions around interview, because that's right. That's where we're
Yeah.
still in that space. The first conversation is going to be probably the quickest way is to schedule something on video.
Mhm.
The noise, background, all those things should be pretty standard.
Yeah.
Um, but
One
educate folks. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I would add for people who are interviewing is sending recorded video. So not like a live interview now, but like a recorded video. That's another nice way to really kind of differentiate yourself from all the candidates out there. So either a little intro about who you are, or maybe after you did an interview, you follow up with a video and just say how nice it was to talk, and maybe call out 1 or 2 specific things that you all discussed. I think don't discount recorded video as well.
Yep. And only piece I would add to that is almost script it out so you don't try
Mm,
to wing it
ramble
and
or
mess up. Yeah.
yeah,
You get nervous again.
yeah.
But that's really good. Like this is so important, at least in my mind, in your mind, right? So that's why we're having this discussion. Again, not to sound like a broken record, because we're still in this space
Mhm,
where we're not as in person as much. Uh,
mhm,
Again, from an interview perspective, it's I think I don't even know the data, but
mhm.
I'm thinking it's large that the first one again was always going
Yeah,
to be a quick.
yeah. Oh, it's
Hey,
definitely yeah, it's, like, definitely increased, like, most recruiters just go with the virtual, at least even for the first few or,
yep,
some companies, all of them, if it's a virtual or distributed company, yeah.
yep, exactly. So let's pivot a bit, because you gave an example on how to stand out as a candidate there,
Mhm,
which is great. And we touched on it a bit during the interview, how to stand out on video. What are
mhm,
some additional tips that you may have come across or seen a candidate or client of yours say, "Hey, I've
mhm.
done this, and it's really helped me really stand out in that interview process. I became more memorable throughout that process."
Mm, I think it's all the things that I've talked about, and I think, like, I know we've talked about, like, all bits and pieces of, what to do.
Hmm.
I just wanna emphasize again that having the right setup, making sure you appear professional, you appear memorable, you have a great background, you have the right technology and the hardware and software and things like that, really, I mean, it really is a confidence booster. So I just
Hmm.
don't want anyone to discount, and I'm sure you're not because you're all here and you're trying to learn, which is great. But just knowing like how much of a difference that can make, and also just making you feel more confident, and it's gonna come out like that when you speak on camera. One other thing I would say is as you start maybe up leveling a little bit more, there are some great pieces of software that you can use to make kind of a better space for yourself. So, for example, we talked about the external microphone. I also use a software called Crisp, KRISP, and Crisp is really great at blocking out background noise. So, let's
Mm,
say, as many of us are working from home, and there's a loud dog barking, or there's construction outside, or there's just lots of distractions. Like that can be very nerve-wracking to be on a call, being like, "Oh my gosh, I have to mute and make sure like all the sound isn't coming through." And sometimes though, like you can't switch interview times if something like is happening in the background. So it is what it is. But including software or adding software like that to kind of your virtual repertoire can be really helpful to just make sure that again you're making the best impression possible. And Crisp is really great at blocking out background noise. Other technology or software I might think about, Camo, CAMO. So if you do not want to buy or cannot afford an external video camera, you might download Camo. You can actually use your cell phone as a camera. And of
Hmm.
course, our cell phone cameras are amazing. So that's something as well that you can think about adding. So just, yeah, lots of different things out there. But those are just two tools that I like using a lot to help kind of up level my virtual presence.
I'm a look into Chris because as we're talking, I don't know if you can hear, but my kids and family they're in the
I can't,
kitchen.
but
Oh, I
you'll
keep
feel
muting the
better.
mic.
Yeah,
Like,
you'll feel better knowing that you have it.
yeah,
But I can't hear anything right now.
and I've used Camel before, and it comes across really good with the iPhone. So yes, yep,
Oh,
that's
nice.
a
Okay, yeah.
phenomenal tip. Let me ask you this. And I've never seen this before, but
Mhm.
just thinking how you have your banner at the bottom,
Yeah.
um, that's kind of more of a visual
Mm,
extra effect. Would
mhm,
you recommend them using that in there? In there, adding something
mhm.
unique but
Yeah.
professional in their video interview?
Yeah, I think that would really differentiate someone. And what do you think, Orlando?
Yeah, because as we're talking, I'm looking at you. I'm like, I've never seen that. It's always been the standard.
Yeah.
It's already popped up for you. But what if someone added a QR code, right, to something? Maybe even though it's probably on the resume on LinkedIn, but something different,
Yeah.
or just something unique. And they're like, oh wow, what's that? Oh, that's for my XXX, or
Mhm.
my project list or portfolio. I know you may
Exactly.
have it, but I also wanted to make sure that it was really available here for you to, take a
Yeah.
look at post the interview. So I think that's good. So you prompted me to say that because of what you have here.
Yeah.
So folks, if you're watching, how you're watching, definitely scan the QR code.
Yeah. And also like on that note, like being able to kind of almost like show that you're like put yourself like as if you are part of the company already, right? Like
Ooh,
having like the company logo
logo.
or like having the company colors on your name tag. Like it just kind of
Ooh.
feels like, there's quite like interview questions I think that are along the lines of like what would, success look like for you or like, using like words like we, it just makes the interviewer feel like, oh, you're already kind of part of the team. So I think visually you can also convey that in subtle ways on video as well.
Love that. Yeah, the company logo or colors. This made me think here. This is if you have the personality to do this, you'd have some real fun. I would even as an opening, almost like an icebreaker, then probably
Uh-huh.
drop it. I don't know. Put where it says the name, say future, futures senior program manager for XY company, whatever it
Yeah.
is. They were like, oh, what's that? Like,
Yeah.
just wanted to have some fun. Just wanted to see how it would it look like.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And I think
Fun.
that'll really break the ice really really fast and have fun, and then you can drop it. But I think that's just stuff like that again to stand out. It
Mhm,
will burn a memory in managers.
mhm.
Those would be some really cool things to try. And again, please share specifically those. Definitely those. I want you to share your feedback with Lorraine and I to see if you've done that and see what kind of reaction you get from a manager. But maybe we should let's make a post on that. Let's make a post and just put that out there and say, hey, here are some quick tips.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, well, we have so many we can share. Yeah, but that would be a fun one.
Brittany says, my LinkedIn froze. Did you say what software you use for banners like Lorraine has? Yep. Go ahead, Lori.
So I'm using something called Prezi Video for this one, but there are a lot of programs out there. There's a company called Warmly, for example. I think even Zoom has like a kind of a form of a name tag now. So yeah, lots of technology. I mean, it's just getting better and better, right? So a lot of different software companies coming out with kind of these like name tags, quote unquote.
Yeah, if you've ever watched, that's why I'm also from just a visual aesthetic standpoint. Lorraine's presentations are phenomenal using Prezi and how they come across screen. It's just phenomenal. It's like it's blended in. It's almost like it's a graphic designer is doing it while she's live. It blends
Mhm.
in. It doesn't cover her face. It comes in right up. The sizing is great and everything. So I'm also hoping she gives a training on that someday soon, so I can join the program.
Yeah,
I'll keep
I mean,
plugging
that's
away.
for sure a surefire way to stand out having
Yeah,
yeah, that kind of presentation.
Yeah, yeah, it's I can't even talk right now, but that platform in that software is insane to use for presentations. It's great. It's really really great. So we are at time. I want to be mindful. That flew, so we're gonna have to have you back a third because I just definitely enjoy our conversation. So much rich content, and I appreciate it. Share with folks where, aside from the QR code, where else they can consume your content.
Yeah, so this QR code goes straight to my newsletter, Career Bites. So it's bite-sized career leadership and management tips with big impact, once a week, free. So hope you will all subscribe. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com/in/Lorraine K Lee. And I would love for you to connect with me and send me a note and keep me updated on your progress. I read all my DMs. And if you want to learn more about me and the services I provide, you can learn more at my website, lorraineklee.com.
Really, you read all your DMs?
Yeah, of course.
Well, we
Sometimes I
wouldn't
miss
get connected.
responding, but I don't mean
Yeah.
to. But yeah,
It may take a while. Like I said, folks, over 300 followers.
I
So
definitely read all of them. Yeah.
that's a lot. Well, Lorraine, again, I appreciate you so much. Great to have a friendship with you over the past year or so. So excited for your growth in the entrepreneur space and what you've been able to do so far. So, but thank you for saying yes the first time, saying yes today, and just being there, and happy to cheer each other on as we go into this journey. So appreciate you so much.
Thanks, Orlando. Appreciate you too.
So folks, share your feedback, connect with Lorraine, myself, subscribe to the podcast. You can check it out on Apple, Spotify, as well as YouTube. But share your feedback, ask any questions you want. We'll be happy to respond. But until next time, folks, we will see you later. God bless.